Photographer Paulo Pellegrin inhabits environments in which many fear to tread. He has been described as a war photographer, a photojournalist, and a lyrical humanist. He has won 10 World Press Photo Awards, numerous Photographer of the Year awards, a Leica Medal of Excellence, the Robert Capa Gold Medal Award, and was assigned the W. Eugene Smith Grant in Humanistic Photography. He has worked for the New York Times Magazine, Newsweek, Time, and National Geographic. In 2005, he became a full member of Magnum Photos. Kathy Ryan, the director of photography at the New York Times Magazine, wrote about his photographs. They vibrate with anguish, fear, suffering. Pellegrin long ago gave up the tools of the coolly detached documentarist, abandoning the clear and sharp in favor of this palette of light and shade. Looking at his photographs, whether of conflict or of individual human experience, the message is not prescriptive. One is invited to enter into the world that he is photographing and to make one's own interpretations. Pellegrin was born into a family of architects in Rome in 1964. His father Luigi was an internationally renowned designer of public buildings and schools, and his mother Luciana was an architect and a professor who came from a family of faded aristocrats. The Pellegrin home was filled with art, poetry, and classical works. Pellegrin says that there was this family imperative that you had to express yourself, either in the humanities or the arts, and there was this absolute disdain for anything that was related to office work. Pellegrin's father, Luigi, instructed his children, through artistic expression, you have to pay for the oxygen you breathe. There was a lot of pressure on the family members to find their chosen path of creativity, but Pellegrin initially struggled to find his way. He eventually started studying architecture, but as he says, it just became clear to me that it wasn't my calling. After nervously announcing to his father that architecture wasn't for him, he blurted out that he would try photography. He enrolled at a photography school in Rome. For 5 years he studied and practiced on the streets of Rome. He became a sponge for all things photographic. The work of Yusuf Kadelka, Gilles Perez, Larry Towell, and Eugene Richards made a lasting impression on him. If you compare Pellegrin's work to theirs, the common characteristic is lyricism within a photojournalistic context. The rest of Pellegrin's apprenticeship took place in the field, in Uganda, Bosnia, Gaza, Cambodia, and Haiti. It was done by doing, he said, mostly in the scenes of conflict, epidemic, and natural disaster. A lot of young photographers head towards war zones in the hope of capturing strong images, finding clients, and building a reputation. In a way, it's almost impossible not to take a few decent images in these high-drama situations. All the basic building blocks for impactful images are usually readily available. While I was working for Reuters in the 90s, if a newbie wanted career advice, you would just say f8 and be there. That means if you set your lens aperture to f8 and you're close enough to the action, then you'll probably land up with something usable. The following excerpt from a conversation with Pellegrin gives us some insight into how he has managed to sustain such a high level of photographic proficiency over many decades as a working photographer. There's this Robert Capa quote, "If your pictures aren't good enough, then you're not close enough." Very true. It always comes back to reducing or annulling distance, but that is only part of the equation. The other part is that if you're not good enough, then you're not reading enough. And the idea there is that photography is not actually about taking pictures. Taking pictures is incidental. It's a byproduct, in a sense, of everything else. What you're really doing is giving form, photographic form, to a thought, to an opinion, to an understanding of the world, of what is in front of you. And so if we think in these terms, then you have to improve the quality of your thoughts. This message clearly defines the gap between an exceptional photographer and everyone else who is out there just taking pictures. Pellegrin is bringing all of what he is and all of what he has been to his photographs. He was trained in tennis and martial arts. He's a voracious reader, obsessed with philosophy and death. He's also an avid chess player. When he photographs, he moves with the sure-footedness of a sportsman. His martial arts training allows him to place himself in the most opportune position. His grounding in the chronicles of photography and the knowledge gleaned from all the books he's read allow him to make links in a fraction of a second that are informed by a depth of learning and understanding. In order to play chess well, you have to be able to anticipate your opponent's move steps ahead. Some brains are better geared for pattern recognition. They identify when the elements within the frame are in balance or have an order. The more complex the pattern, the less obvious the order. When we as viewers look at some of his complex compositions, we are able to settle into the pattern, and then we are able to freely investigate the content. And then, because of their ambiguity, we are able to imagine the context. For most of his career, Pellegrin sought to reflect the complexity of his subject matter in additive compositions, fitting into the frame as many elements, as much world, as much life as possible. But more recently, he finds himself doing the opposite. He says, "Now, more and more, I think of photography as being like a sculptor with a block of marble. Michelangelo knew that David was inside the block of marble, and his task was to make him come out. I think of photography in this way. It's a subtractive process." Visually, what separates Pellegrin's work from most other photographers working in the photojournalistic tradition is that his images are seldom restricted to communicating information. He says, "My idea of photography is always unfinished pictures. Pictures where the viewer has a space to enter, to engage." His images become meaningful in that they provide clues about the full picture but leave some things unspoken. He creates a tension between the specific and the universal. He says that when photography does that, when it combines the personal, the specific, and an echo of something larger, that's always interesting. This reflects the true nature of life in general. Things are seldom simple, black and white, and within the extremes of life experience, uncertainty dominates. He says, "It is never one thing. Tragedy always coexists with beauty, and joy exists with sorrow." I read an interesting reflection by author Marco Belpolotti. He wrote the following. Susan Sontag, in a book on photography, wrote, "The limit of the photographic knowledge of the world is that, if it can spur consciences, it cannot be in the long run a political or ethical knowledge. The knowledge achieved through photographs will always be a form of sentimentalism, cynical or humanistic." Belpolotti suggests that Pellegrin has taken the opposite path to that described by Susan Sontag. Pellegrin doesn't try to evoke an ethical reaction or present beauty for beauty's sake. As an artist, he creates incomplete, fragmentary images taken from the flow of life to make us imagine what life is. Pellegrin has devoted most of his career to photographing war and the human condition, but recently he has also started directing his attention towards the environmental challenges that we face. In 2017, he spent some time in Antarctica working with a group of NASA pilots and scientists. Through these images, he's managed to transcend the picturesque. He says, "It has to be something else, or else it doesn't really work for what I'm trying to do or say." You have to, in a sense, go beyond, especially when it's very beautiful. Asked during an interview if he would change anything in his life, he said, "I feel very privileged to have this capacity to enter people's lives. I'm always amazed at the access that we have as photographers. I feel very fortunate to have found what I think is my voice. I wouldn't change anything." I hope this video gave you some insight into Paulo Pellegrin and his work. Thanks for joining me. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Is it over yet?
Yes, it is good. It really is.
What are they?
Well,
and find out what the future holds in store.